Oh, hello. Hi,
That music
Jess.
was Suzanne. I am like, I
Totally, Chris. It was very relaxing. I actually had closed my eyes for about 10 seconds. I was thinking about what I'm going to eat for lunch in a little bit.
you took a micro nap.
What's that?
You took a micro nap.
So, for those of you watching, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you to our viewers. My name is Jeremy Bloom of OhHello, I'm the founder and chief mentor. I've got 3 amazing executives with me today. Please, we're going to go around the horn. Jess, how about you go first?
Awesome. I'm Jess Cook. I am head of content at LASSO, which is a software platform for the event production industry. And I also host a podcast called That's Marketing Baby with one of my marketing besties, Susan Winograd. And B2B content is like my happy place. I could talk about it forever. So excited to be here. Thank you, Jeremy, for inviting me.
Love that you're here. For everyone that is not familiar with Jess, she and I worked with each other before. Such an amazing talent, but most importantly, the way that she views content and her podcast that she does with Susan. Chef's Kiss. Next with us, Ben. Hi, Ben. Great to see you.
I was promised Charlie Brown music. Is that not happening?
We're going to do a Jay-Z Charlie Brown mashup in a different version. But if you want, like, I can dance for you. I can go, how's that? This is live. This is live.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, I'm Ben Hindman. I founded a company called Splash. We are event marketing software, field marketing software, and events. I actually recently took a role as a CMO, my first real marketing job. So I'm coming here launching a product while we're speaking. Very exciting.
This is so meta.
Also president. I think I'm the president of the fan club of That's Marketing Baby. But and so we're a little rogue. But yes, avid listener. I have not missed an episode, Jess. So
thank you, Ben. That's amazing. I dub you president.
Yes,
I love that.
I haven't listened, but the title alone has me hooked. So I will definitely become one of your most loyal listeners after this, for sure.
You'll be in the top 7 of my MySpace favorite 7 for sure, Chris. Chris, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Chris Harihar. I'm a partner at Crenshaw Communications. We are a leading B2B technology PR agency supporting a lot of brands, the tech space, across a range of sectors, from ad tech to martech to sales tech to AI, cybersecurity, and so on and so forth. Some clients include DoubleVerify, Yahoo, Crunchbase, a whole host of others. And it's just cool to talk about B2B PR and content and marketing. So super excited to have this conversation and meet some of you folks, and looking forward to providing some hopefully good, not terrible and shitty recommendations on things that you can use when you're thinking about launching your own products and services.
Amazing, Chris. Well, and part of the reason I wanted to get this great panel together was because next week, OhHello.io is going to be live. Woohoo!
Whoa.
So it's been a long time coming. There have been some trials and tribulations throughout the process. I'm an open book, happy to, it's a roller coaster. There are some ups, there are some downs, some twists, some turns, and some, and we'll keep it at that. But I can get deeper if you guys want, but that's what I pay my therapist for. Nonetheless, part of the reason I wanted to have the 3 of you here is because as I'm launching a product, and the 3 of you, when I think of some of the OhHello mentors, people that are friends of OhHello, part of the OhHello tribe, and I think about technology, I think about events, I think about content, I thought it'd be really helpful to get words of wisdom that other people can listen to, because the whole purpose of OhHello is to connect folks, to provide expertise, to provide mentorship, to provide guidance and advice in an empathetic way. So with us, it's just that. So why don't we go kind of topic by topic? When we think about events, and Ben, you and I had spent some time with each other quite a long time ago. And when I think of events, I think of Ben Hindman. And I think about your expertise of creating a community, I think about your expertise in getting people together and also how to market an event. So why don't you tell us a little bit just about what you've done throughout your career, so those listening have a better idea.
And so I didn't realize you were launching this thing. Mazel, man. This is
Thanks.
exciting.
Thank you.
I thought it was already launched. It's been blowing up my feed already. So you're doing it.
Thank you. So the Jess Cook School of Content Marketing, I have taken her classes. Thank you. It's hence a long time coming. The community aspect, yes, been pushing that for quite a long time. The platform, the trials and tribulations of finding different developers in different areas, and then having all the tech work. So, but next week is the soft launch, we'll call it.
Well, let me ask you, Jeremy, are you throwing any events, or I'm going to go ahead and just call it out right now. I don't think virtual events are events. I think they're virtual experiences. They're great. They do a lot. We're doing something right now. This feels important, but it's certainly not an event. And so I'm curious, Jeremy, had you thought about throwing some IRL madness?
As a bootstrapping entrepreneur, I'm preferring for this route, for the soft launch, to keep it in.
And I'll support you there, but I'll just kindly disagree for a couple of reasons, if I may. I'm just going to put my hat in the ring as the IRL.
Ben's already come up with the hot takes. Go for it.
Yeah,
hot takes.
We're 6 minutes and 49 seconds in. You got to.
I should have put the antiperspirant and deodorant on today versus just deodorant.
Look, I think that this stuff is really important to be online, and it reaches a mass audience and it gets the word out. So I love what you're doing here. But I'd argue that you can throw incredibly inexpensive events nowadays and actually have a huge impact. And here's how. Number one word is partnerships. Especially with OhHello. I mean, how many partners could you get to OhHello? Get someone else to foot the bill. That's number one. Number two, and I think I see Chris is in an office right now. And let me tell you what, I don't see an office. I see a venue. I mean, nowadays, how many empty offices are there that you can just squat in and host? And people want you to go in their office. And actually, I'm finding more and more that employees actually want you to host stuff in their office because they're looking for an excuse to get in there. Number three, look, you can hold a very, inexpensive by just not doing a meal or just doing breakfast, just doing coffee. There's all sorts of ways to keep this on the cheap. But the reason that I like events so much, and the reason I would say for a launch is so important, early in my career, and Jeremy, this is when we were working together, I learned something very interesting, that events create truth. That by the event happening, it just is now a thing. A launch has occurred because we have celebrated it, because we have come together. And without that experience, for some reason, people don't see it as a true thing that happened, a real experience. And so for this thing to really hit, I want to recommend that you do throw an event. And the only other thing I'll share here is that with all the faces, the beautiful mug shots of all the people that you've already had on this LinkedIn channel, I think you could create a really powerful attendees page. And I'll just share for anyone who's thinking about this, the attendees page is the number one most important thing you can do when you're throwing an event. Who else is coming? And then just start with 3. And by the time you have the event, you'll have, 30 people on that attendees page, 300 people. You don't need everybody, as many people as you can. And what I found is that kind of that momentum that you build, again, creates that truth that this is happening. And without it, I just don't know that it even happened, Jeremy. Did it even happen?
We've got 5 days, Jeremy.
Event or it didn't happen.
If I can jump in on
Chris,
that,
please. Yes.
Yeah, no, I think that's great advice from Ben. And it's interesting when we work with a lot of clients. When we talk about events, there's often this switch that's flipped, and you think about an event from a third party, hosting an event. You want to participate at that event. It's a conference, whatever it might be. And generally, what I'm increasingly trying to recommend clients do is really think about your own hosted events. Hosted events, there's a lot of opportunity to manage costs, keep costs down, have a really high impact event where you totally own all of the branding. You can curate the programming exactly how you'd like. And you can keep a very tight, intimate, VIP-esque sort of event attendee list for that to really make sure that not just the programming is curated, but the folks in the room are curated to your needs to support business goals, et cetera. And I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think more, especially when you see the cost of like third party, participating or sponsoring and third party events going up, I think there's way more opportunity to really consider launching your own series of hosted events. And it's something that we've been working with clients on for years. thought leadership panels, et cetera, that are hosted by our clients. And to Ben's point, I think, it's still weirdly an untapped opportunity where folks aren't thinking about it enough and should be considering it more and, budgeting for it every year, more hosted events. And so certainly it's something that we're recommending to clients, and I wish that more clients would sign up for sure.
I'll also say,
please, Jess.
This is a great opportunity for like capturing content, right? So you're at the event, you can come up with some sort of like, okay, we're going to do like man on the street type interviews with anyone that's there. We're going to ask them all the same question. We're going to kind of create this compilation video of like, here's what happened. Here's what people had to say about this theme, this thing. And so it's a huge opportunity. Don't ever let a live event go by without some sort of plan of how you're going to capture video content while you're there.
Great call out. Now, what about if you are a bootstrapping entrepreneur that is a solopreneur for right now? So in my case, I'm backing this through my own finances. The goal is to not keep it as bootstrap. The goal is to gain the audience, to gain the metrics, to have a wonderful experience for the customers, for the mentees, the O's, the hellos, the mentors, and for the O's and the hellos to just really kick it off and get those metrics, to get the usage, to be able to tell the story, to then get funding, to get velocity. Like that's the overall goal. But at this stage, at this step, doing this out of my extra bedroom in the Chicagoland area, what is the best? Ben, you had mentioned partnerships, like you had mentioned, and I saw that grimace. I was like,
It's tough. I mean, I'm in an early stage business too, and deciding whether or not to use your budget on, champagne or something or a venue is really hard. It just doesn't feel good in my body. So I understand the concern. Yeah. I also, especially with what you're doing, partners and sponsors mean double the leads at half the cost, or another one, triple the leads at a third of the cost. It's incredible how it keeps on going. So it really does, I'm thinking about how you could create a win-win for additional partners. I think it's super important. And the other thing I'd add there is I have never, not once in my whole career, and I used to do logo soup, I have never found that share of voice really matters at an event. I find that when people come to an event and they see the hosts, the brain's capacity to take in multiple partners is displayed at how vast trade shows really are. You really can have many partners. And so look, Jeremy, I'm not saying it needs to be your number one thing to do right now, but I'd argue that as you look around at some of the people who've already been part of the O's or the hellos, I bet you they'd love to launch a mentor program either internally or launch or bring in mentors into their organization if they're startups. And, again, what we're talking about here, just to break it down, we're talking about $3,000 we got to get to. You got to throw like an event, it's like between $3,000 and $5,000. And again, that's a skimpy event. I get it. Like $15,000 is about what you need to throw like a good one, like a really good one for I don't know, call it like 50 to 100 people. Yep. But if you're talking about like 30 people, we're looking to get $3,000. So if everyone throws $1,000 in, holy smokes, we've got a really nice one. So I don't know, but but I also want to just honor what you said. It is hard to cut that $1,000 check. That's $1,000 you're not spending on groceries at this stage. So I get it.
Right.
But I've only found that it's worth it. I've only seen it be worth it. So from the other side of that cavern.
But you're right. It's the human connection. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to build this business, is to create the human connection, because so many people feel, as we think through just empathetically and realistically what's taking place within marketing, media, SaaS, technology, the list goes on in terms of different fields. There are nearly 500,000 people within the tech industry that have lost their job within the past 10 months. And because of that, there are a lot of people looking. There's a lot of fundamental bench strength and knowledge out there of people wanting to give back, of people wanting to be able to help one another and to be mentors and mentees. And so I love the idea of down the line, in the midterm, going and doing an event to, basically to see where the if this proof of concept, but for the online based one-to-one video sessions, if they're paying off and if people are having wonderful experiences, I feel like I need to gain a little bit more momentum But I do agree that events are going to be a critical element of this, because you can't have a community without being in real life. There's no such thing. I'm in that camp too, Ben. I definitely feel that even the third, the third space, obviously you've got your home, your work, and the third space of going to a restaurant, going to a venue, going to a library, a religious institution, social club, whatever it might be. Those third places, that's where there's a lack of camaraderie. And as we all in a post-pandemic era feel a sense of isolation, I think it's going to be important to bring people together and bridge people together. With that said, on the topic of events,
That was deep.
Yeah, you know what? I'm not just a pretty face, Chris. Thank you. Well, Chris, were you going to say something a second ago?
No, I think spot on. I think for a platform like yours, especially given what you highlighted, that there are a lot of folks that are seeking mentorship, that are seeking to be, that are seeking to mentor as well. An in-person event, a no-brainer when you're ready, of course. And feel free. We have if you want to do one in New York, we've got the Crenshaw office here. Nobody's ever here. It's just kind of me in my pajamas, sort of walking around on a day-to-day basis. I'm happy to. We're happy to certainly facilitate that and be a space for you for sure.
Amazing. And Chris, the OhHello team has loved the working relationship and partnership with Crenshaw Communications. So just want to point that out, and thank you.
For sure. No, of course. We're working with Jeremy. We're trying to be the stealth PR agency in support of the OhHello launch, and we're super excited to support him for sure.
Truly appreciate it. So why don't we go a little bit more? Why don't we go take one layer back in terms of event tech? Would love to have a better understanding, Jess, of event tech. What does that mean? We all understand technology. We all understand events, but can you talk through a little bit like what you're doing at Lasso, Ben, your experience building Splash, and also understanding, Ben, once Jess talks about Lasso, just what you're building, so we can have a better why not talk about it today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, event tech is a really, really big and growing space right now. The events industry has been pretty underserved. And I think that was really apparent in COVID, right? Like all of a sudden, everyone had to scramble, so many kind of AV techs and people in the event industry had to leave because, events were essentially illegal. And so it really, that industry in particular took a very hard hit. And so I think a lot of companies are seeing now, they're coming back. Events, people are craving, they're ravenous for events. And it's really hard now for these companies to keep up with that demand. And so they need more than ever great tech to help them build their business, meet that demand, exceed that demand, create great experiences. So Lasso is one such event tech software provider. We are very much in the AV production space. So our software platform is built for AV production companies. You go to a conference or a concert, there's an entire company of people who have been for months working on that event, understanding the lighting, the sound, the space, the breakout rooms, everything that needs to happen. And then there's a team of people on site that have to get scheduled to come there and put it all together and make it actually come to life. So our software helps those businesses do everything from start to finish: project management, crew management, inventory management. But we ourselves have had a handful of launches this year, product launches at Lasso. We had 4, in fact, in a 6-month time frame. And so, it was a sprint. It was every 6 weeks we had a new product to announce, which was very exciting. But it was also a lot of work. And so we knew at the very beginning of the year, we knew we were going to have these 4 announcements kind of back to back to back to back. And so we came up with a system to really make that work for us. So 2 things that really helped. One was we knew we weren't going to have demos available. We weren't going to be ready to demo the product the day we announced it. It was more of, we wanted to make noise in the market. And so when we announced them, we weren't going to be able to show them anything about it besides kind of the value that it was going to bring. And so we created a wait list for folks to be able to join, right? Hand raisers to say, I'm very interested in this product. Whenever there's more information, reach out to me. This seems really obvious, but I think the thing that we didn't foresee that happened was that group of waitlisters were consistently for the rest of the product launches. And then eventually when we had like our big kind of online, one-to-many demo of all 4 new products, they were the most engaged in terms of email sends and registrations and actually attending the event. So that was a big kind of unlock for us, was realizing like go after those waitlisters. They have raised their hand. They're clearly interested. So they will be very engaged. The other thing that was really helpful was we relied on something that I've been calling the creative centerpiece. So we created for each launch one key piece of creative. Sometimes it was a highly polished video we produced. Other times it was just a really interesting kind of graphic that was animated, depending on what we needed to say about the product or show about the product. But we used that one piece everywhere. So a couple things happened with that. We kind of drove the cost per use down. We weren't trying to create net new content for everything and drive up the cost of the launch. And another kind of byproduct of this was everyone saw the same message. So it felt very cohesive. So if you were a customer, maybe you saw it in an email and in the product inside the platform itself. If you were a prospect, maybe you saw it in social and, you're a newsletter subscriber. So you also saw it there. So it felt like, I think the third byproduct of that kind of all encompassing kind of one thing coming out everywhere was it made us feel a lot bigger than we really are. We're actually a small 4-person marketing team, and it made us look very big. Like we're here, we're there, we're in your email, we're in your social, with the same kind of message. And it felt really, it felt like a big official launch.
Amazing. Ben, I see you nodding.
Awesome product. I tried to build this product once and had the hardest time doing it. What you're describing, what LASSO is such a needed thing in the industry.
Yeah.
And candidly, it's a really hard industry to hit. I mean, Jess, I'm curious, would you mind speaking a bit to how you actually, through your launches, target the right customers? Because my experience with these types of customers are that they're rarely online, looking for this type of stuff. So I'd have to imagine you have to make a whole bunch of noise to really get them interested. It's an uphill battle from a marketing standpoint. Is that right, or has that been your experience? And if so, how have you have you found these customers?
Yeah. AV production company owners are an old school bunch. They absolutely are. And they are online sometimes, but it's not, they're not like marketers. When you market to marketers, you kind of know where you need to go. It feels, because we're marketers, it feels easy, right? But yeah, this group, we have to get very specific about where we target them. We do a lot of partnerships with industry publications because they do go there for a lot of news. We also have pretty deep ties in the AV production, like crew kind of group of audience as well, because what they want and what they need kind of sways the industry. So that has been really, really helpful. So it has a lot of, we talk to a ton of customers because we have to figure out like, where are you going for news? Who are you talking to? A lot of it is word of mouth. And so, it's very much getting embedded in the industry, going to the events they're at, being in the publications they read, because, you can't just rely on like LinkedIn and Facebook to get there.
And the mention of the publications, so being in those publications, I think super important. And so you're touching on the PR piece, and maybe what you're referring to is both earned and paid, probably a little bit of both. But I think that's super important as well. Like when working with content teams, we often find that sometimes on the content front, you're talking to your customers. Essentially, you're just talking like, it's more push in that you're speaking to the folks that understand your brand, are loyal to you, oftentimes know you already. And so the PR piece really helps from an amplification perspective. to ensure that you're in front of prospects and make sure that you're speaking to new customers and sort of building that pipeline. And that's partly why it's so important for PR and content to work so cross-functionally and to support each other and work, intimately to ensure that launches are successful. The least successful launches are where a content team is sort of working in a silo, a PR team's working in a silo, and then all they do is, figure out how to promote a press release day of. That is where a lot of failure occurs and where you see a lot of gaps ultimately in deficiency and success. And so, what you've outlined is like spot on, I think, in terms of how PR and content should work together, because you want to make sure that you're speaking to every audience, whether it's a customer or a prospect, and, addressing that entire funnel as you should. So super important. Also, I just want to comment that having worked on some event tech stuff, we were the PR agency of record for Bizzabo, for example, for a while, the solutions that you're mentioning are super fascinating to me, because I'm always so used to hearing about holistic event success software and platforms. So to hear about something that's more tailored to a specific niche and that serves a very specific audience, I think is super fascinating. And that, I think there's a lot of opportunity to sort of cut through the clutter, both from a content and from a PR perspective, in order to ensure that you have a differentiated message. And so certainly, Lasso sounds interesting for that reason to me, and hearing about it. Because during COVID, it was such an interesting time for event tech. You guys know this better than I just know this through working on Bizzabo, but at that time, it was the worst time and the best time. And it was everybody was struggling. And at the same time, it was Hopkins raising $6 billion. And we see, that story played out because they couldn't really, navigate the market beyond, the COVID period, or the peak of the COVID period. But, there's so much here in this space that I love and find interesting, and just, so kudos to you guys, obviously, for doing a great job, managing your businesses through what I can only imagine were some really interesting, years.
Ben, it looks like you were about to say something.
It was a challenging time. That was
I was just gonna say, please go a little bit deeper.
It actually spoke to what I think. It's what I'm doing now, and I'm not quite sure if I've got the right strategy now in this new one. But
Ben, can you take a step back and tell us a little bit more about what you're doing now?
Oh, sure. Hey, I'm Ben.
Hey, Ben. Nice to meet you.
I actually was his event planner. He's my sales guy, and I threw events to get him in the room with prospects. Fun. And then I started a company called Splash. Splash is a event marketing software. It's end to end. It makes your events look beautiful, and we're really good at those small, long tail events. So if you've got many events around a conference and you're marketing through the event, we got a hell of a piece of software for you. If you're marketing your event like it's a ticketed event, it's, we can do ticketing, but our bread and butter is if you've got a nice long funnel, you're trying to manage people throughout it, and you're trying to reach out to people in and around conferences, or road shows, happy hours, dinners, workshops. Oh man, our product is badass. And so we've been doing it for, about a decade. We power all the events for Salesforce and Facebook and Amazon, and insert cool brand here. A lot of retail events, a lot of CPG stuff. Really proud of it. And so what I've got a chance to do is be the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain with all these incredible event planners. I'm kind of I get to see all the things that work and all the things that they do. So I guess I'm not the Wizard of Oz. I'm the curtain. And I've learned a lot. But look, what I'd say, the thing that we did, which I think worked, and I'm trying to do in this next thing I'm working on, is make customer success our head of marketing, right? That actually their experience and the community is really how we grow our user base. And it worked, like Jess said, especially in an industry that's this small and, makes decisions with a lot of due diligence, right? Events, you can get fired if you throw a bad event and if your software doesn't work. And so you need a lot of trust. And so to build that trust, you start with only a few and you just nail it. It ends up taking a long time. It's kind of why you see all these event companies take so long to grow, is that it takes a long time to build that trust, to get people to switch. And yeah, that certainly was our experience. But that's what I'm doing now. I'm actively going after, call it 5 to 10 loud voices, trying to sell them on a deal, and then just making it work, making the product really work for their needs, and then using their testimonials, using their clout, getting their advocacy, and growing it like that. I wouldn't call it like the fastest rocket ship growth strategy, but I do think it's tried and true. And so as I'm thinking about our launch and putting out this new product, certainly that's how we're going about it.
Sounds very intriguing. Sounds very cool.
I would imagine that the testimonials for your business are so hugely important. Like in some PR efforts and marketing campaigns, you can get by with like an anonymized case study or no case study because the tech sounds like, maybe the tech sounds cool or whatever the case is. But I think for this space, like the tech has to be cool, of course, but also you really have to showcase that you have practiced expertise, you have proven success. Because an event is very tangible in a way that using a piece of software, sort of like in the digital virtual space, in a way that that's not. And so certainly hugely important. But also just random thing regarding Splash. Like I've not used Splash.
Oh come on, dude! Let's end this thing. We're done.
We're going to use it.
Going to.
We're going to use it for sure more. But I know we have so much recognition of Splash, and like the differentiation here is like event software can often be very clunky and ugly and
not Splash.
Not Splash, and I think that's what really stands out. And I haven't used Splash, and I know that. So clearly, you guys have done a good job on the content and the marketing side. And have a really proven track record on that front. And I kind of compare it to like WeTransfer in the way that it's a commoditized space. There are a lot of file transfer services out there, but WeTransfer. It looks great. It's beautiful, super easy to use. I sort of see Splash kind of as a comparable in that way.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, take the WeTransfer compliment all day long.
We helped launch WeTransfer in the States years ago.
Nice.
So know that business well, and it's awesome. And it hasn't really changed. It's kind of great. It's just the same thing, but if it's not broke, why fix it?
So one of the themes here that we've been talking about events, we've been talking about PR, we've been talking about launches, and we've been talking about content. Let's get a little bit deeper on content because it's the curating content that drives all. Go ahead, Ben, one more time.
I was gonna say, I gotta shut up. Jess is here. Like I've been waiting for this moment.
She's the content queen.
So good. It's so good.
So good. Between her podcast, her newsletter, Jess is one of the sharpest marketers I've worked with or have come across in 20 plus years in this industry. So what's important, Jess, tell us a little bit more about.
Wait, can I interject again? I want to say why I think Jess is doing a great job. And I'm just because it's always valuable. She has not once let me down on a trust. I've read her articles. I listen to the podcast, and it's just like banger after banger of things I can actually do. And how many times have we like clicked an article and it's just like, this is fluff. You just clickbaited me. I'm going to leave. Jess has never done that to me. You've not let me down once, Jess, and I really appreciate that.
Oh man, that means so much. I mean, flattery will get you everywhere with me. So
keep on helping my content.
I appreciate it. That's so kind. I think a couple things, especially when it comes to launches. So, I talked about kind of the creative center piece that is really just a big kind of unlock for small teams specifically. But I also think Ben raised a really nice point around the testimonials and having social proof. And I think if there's a way before your launch that you can even just have a couple of very credible, well-known, highly trusted people in your industry or in your space, take a look at what you're building before it gets to the public. And whether they actually have access to use it or not, but just to give you some feedback and some information and maybe some thoughts on like, hey, what's missing? What could be here, right? Like work with the product team to really build that out for the people who are eventually going to use it for their direct needs. But maybe you can get some sort of like, hey, I've never seen anything like this in my, 10 years in the business, or I cannot wait for this to go live because I'm going to be first in line to get it, right? If you can get some of that social proof of someone who has gone behind the scenes and seen the product and can give people a little like gold stamp of approval from someone who they trust, that is huge. Another thing that's really big, and we were talking about this specifically for events, like you have to have that social proof, are case studies. And something that I think we did really, really well this year at LASSO was completely revamped our case studies in a way that I hadn't seen done before, and I'm really excited about. And is doing really well, really, really well for us. It's actually one of the top kind of last touch points before conversion, which is amazing. So, I think the typical case study for really any industry goes like wall of text, starts with a problem, then a solution, and then the results, right? And a couple bullet points. What we did was we really made it like a choose your own adventure. There are people who like to read. There are people who like to watch a video. There are people who just want to see 3 stats and move on. And so we kind of reformatted our case studies to provide all of that. And, we have included kind of accordions of like, here's exactly what they said. Here's what they think about this. Here's their favorite thing about it. Here's maybe something that's still challenging for them, right? Like brutally honest feedback. Again, sometimes even if it includes like, hey, this part we're still kind of working through. I think that's great to include because again, it just builds that trust. It's not all fluff and glowy and wonderful. It's real. And people need to see like, this is the reality of when I have this, how my world is going to look.
That was great. Chris, jump in.
Yeah, no, that is
Thank
awesome.
you, Jess.
That's really great to hear. And I've not really thought about case studies in that way, more on the PR side. So I'm not actually developing the case studies, but what often happens is PR gets pulled in to amplify a case study or to consider whether or not we can use a case study for PR. And then the roadblock becomes once you go to the customer to ask them if you can actually do some PR around a case study, there's often a no, associated with that. You see a roadblock or two. It doesn't happen often. Often you just can't do anything with the case study. It just lives on the website, and that's where it is. And it's difficult to amplify through PR because there are so many guardrails in place when you actually go to the client and ask them for that if we can, market the case study through PR. What you've outlined, though, I think is really important because if B2B companies start thinking more about this robust case study experience, I think it then brings the customer along for a deeper buy-in, and which will ultimately deliver, I think, more or deliver less friction when you're trying to consider whether or not something could be usable for PR. So if you have a video from the client and they've given you more content, they provided actual quotes, that makes it easier for PR to get them to be involved in actually amplifying or at least getting approval to amplify a case. So I think it's a really interesting point that you've raised. And often, though, what you see is what happens is the marketing teams just work in a silo or the content team works in a silo, and they don't think about that piece of buy-in for PR. But if you have that deeper connection with the client, you can build out a more comprehensive case. Then I think there's more opportunity to create a connection with the PR side and deliver the value that you ultimately want for that great work. And so it's really interesting what you've raised, and I think it's something that I would, push our clients to do more of because it's often so difficult to get a case study. And honestly, from a press perspective, if you don't have a customer, a brand to speak about a product launch or a capability, nobody gives a shit. I mean, like nobody cares. You have to have some partner on board to validate what you're doing. At the most basic level, they have to be able to be mentioned. At the deeper level, you want them to provide commentary, quote, do an interview, and talk about the success that you've delivered together. And that's so instrumental today. Like nobody wants to speak to a vendor about some amorphous thing. They want to see real world proof that this delivers benefit and impact, and this all speaks to that. And so kudos to you on the case study work because I think that can deliver a lot of value on the PR front as well.
It goes full circle to what Ben was saying earlier about events and in person, having that trust, having that interaction. So when people are together and you can celebrate a momentous occasion and just look each other in the eye, it's the same element of that human trust that takes place through content, through case studies, which also basically is like an adhesion that puts together events, content, and PR, because it's all within marketing. So just trying to bring it all forward and full circle. Jess, what were you going to say a second ago?
I was just going to say, just to confirm your point too, Chris, what we've found is building our case studies that way has made repurposing like 1,000 times easier. We can just pull one video. We can just pull, one quote. We can grab those 3 stats and turn it into a graphic. So that was something that we were pretty adamant about when we were building it, is like, before we create this thing, let's think about how we're going to distribute it before we even build it, because otherwise that's why you end up with that wall of text. If you're not thinking in that way, you create something that is really difficult to like put in other places and promote back to the original piece. Right. So
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And just from a CS perspective, I would imagine that just makes you stickier with the client. I mean, like, it's, like, obviously you want to deliver value for the client and you want to showcase impact. And that is the ultimate decision maker on whether or not you continue to be a vendor in support of a client. But this is all relationship building. And the more that you can create a tighter bond with your client by doing these more robust case studies where they feel like they have an opportunity to speak and be promoted and amplified and talk about, partnership, that is hugely helpful for CS, I think, ultimately, and makes you stick as a partner. And that's absent, I think, a lot in terms of thinking about case studies. It's like, all right, how do we check this box? Like, we need a couple metrics. Like, we want to push it on PR. Like, you can't think that way. I think it's too transactional and not as sophisticated as it should be in order to get the benefit that you need.
Do you mind if I jet in, Jess?
Please.
So I got a customer to commit to doing any co-marketing that we wanted, right? They're busy. It's a big customer, so I don't want to ask, too many things. I can come in with 1, maybe 2 big asks. They said I could draft their quotes. I'm doing that. They said they're down, but I've been racking my brain. What do I ask for? Do I go create a new piece of collateral and like co-brand it with them? Do I host a webinar and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I do a dinner. I'm just a little. I got one, for lack of a better term, bullet in the chamber, and I don't want to miss my shot. So. Yeah. What do you think, Jess? What has worked for you that you would use if you had this opportunity here?
I love that question, Ben. And I love that you're being really like cautious about it and not like, okay, great. We're going to do it and we're going to jump on the phone. We're going to figure it out. I would first start with like, what's the story? Like, what's the story of this customer? What did they accomplish? Was it like one event that they just had incredible success with? Was it consistently they've done 12 road shows in a row and they just saw like these really consistent, success with Splash? So first I would figure that out. And then it's kind of like, okay, whatever that story is, what's the best way to tell it? And what are because you only have one of these, right? Because you have the one shot, like figure out how you can tell it in multiple ways. Oftentimes, a 30-minute interview will get you everything you could possibly need for a case study, a one-pager, a few social posts, really interesting kind of statistics, right? I think that's where I would start, though, is like, what is the thing I want to convey about what we did for this customer, or what this customer was able to accomplish with us, and then think about how you're going to distribute that before it doesn't have to be one piece of content. It could be multiple ways.
So I'm hearing you say, record it, maybe do it live, but maybe don't. Maybe it doesn't matter. But the important part is to get it on video, chop it up, and use it everywhere. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I mean, that's my favorite way. I think it's the easiest. I think people like to see other people's faces. And whether you use it as video or you bring it into some sort of text format, depending on the comfort level of your customer. But that's where I would start with the story, figure out what that looks like first.
And from the PR perspective, whenever we'll often clients will ask us, how do we bring on a client? How do we bring on a customer, to do some PR storytelling? And in that case, it's always understanding and recognizing that the customer has to look like the hero of the story. That's hugely important because it makes it ultimately worth their while. And so, figuring out how do we present them as the superhero, and then if we're in the background, serving as that layer that ultimately enabled the success that they had, that's great. But ultimately, it starts with how do we make this person look good? That's what they care about. How do we make the company look good? That's what they care about. And so that's, I think, hugely important, at least from a PR perspective, that often dictates whether or not we can actually bring someone on for PR storytelling and, get value that way.
It all goes back to value and trust. It tends to be the theme of this discussion, which is amazing. What other, just as I look at the clock and see that we have a few minutes left, first and foremost, I have opened up the chat for those watching. If you have live questions, Ben, Chris, and Jess would love to help you, would love to be able to provide some live feedback as mentors, as experts within their field. Additionally, I'm here to help. What other words of wisdom or parting advice do you three have just for those watching from the realm that you're a master in, for the master of your domain?
I got one.
Yeah. Give it to us, Ben.
Small one, but I actually think it's very important. And I've been wanting to say this on your show. So thank you for having me. Is this a show? It kind of is a show.
Ish. It's becoming one.
This is going to sound random, but it's very important. There's no such thing as a venue that is too small. I think that is just a lesson for everyone to live by. There's no such thing. Oh, it seems like we do have a real question. But Jess, I just want to make sure you registered that. You feel okay with me putting that in the universe here? It can always be a smaller venue.
Absolutely.
I've never experienced too many people in a venue in my entire life.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yes.
Thank you. For real. It looks like Haley has a question. Do you ever bring on content / creative consultants for particular launches? If so, what do you look for in a consultant to collaborate with? Thank you, Haley.
I can speak to this. A few years back, I was at a company called Fastly, and we were working on this enormous global research report. It was going to launch on the same day in 8 countries. PR efforts involved, paid ads involved. Every single marketing department had taken part in this, and I just happened to be the lead. We did bring on some creative consultants for that. So we needed an agency who would really help us bring to life kind of the big, exciting, there were like 5 stats from this research report that were going to be the things where people were like, whoa, that's big, and I need to download the report to learn more. So we brought in an agency to help us bring those to life in a really cool way on our landing page, and also in our paid ads. They were very they weren't just great designers, they were very good strategists as well. So creative strategy in terms of like just what the messaging needed to say, like pulling the actual insights from the research report and turning it into a headline that really spoke to people. And so that was kind of one of the big ones where we needed someone to be able to come in. And I think one of the big reasons we needed somebody too is because it was going out in about 8 countries. We really needed to focus on it being universal and easy to translate. We were working with, our localization team and had to get that right. It couldn't be something that, tons of slang or lingo that only America would understand. We really had to take that into consideration. So yes, absolutely. For really big projects like that, I think sometimes it's nice to have an outside party who's a little bit more objective in their thinking about this is like the really exciting thing that you have going for you for this launch.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's a really important, and I've struggled with this my entire career, to be honest with yourself about what you can and should take on. And sometimes I think there's a sense like you have this Herculean mindset where you're like, I think I could do this, and I think I could do that. And you end up trying to do too much. I think it's important, and I think I've matured as a leader here at Crenshaw, where I think it's okay to say, I need another person to help me with this, because that is a shit ton of work. I don't have specialist expertise. I don't want to fake it. I want to make sure that I deliver the best possible results for the client. And so, we increasingly bring on specialists to support in specific areas. Like back in the day, conferences and awards work, for example, was done by, the team at large and sort of bounce around. Then we brought in specialists just to do conferences and awards. And then we brought in a specialist just to support on content, because everything requires dedicated expertise and time. And so I think recognizing that is super important to ensure that you deliver the best results. But then I also think in terms of who to bring on, it's all in the network. If a friend of a friend doesn't know you, if you're not networking to have your own network, and then that network needs to overlap with mine and commingle with mine, that's how I figure out who to work with. I go off of recommendations, word of mouth, and you could send me the best possible resume on the planet or the best possible portfolio or whatever it is. But if I can't cap somebody that I know to gut check whether or not it makes sense to bring you on, I'm probably not going to bring you on, because that's how competitive it is out in the market today, and that's how many great people are available. So I think, and it speaks to the power of network, which is what we're talking about with OhHello, and so super important for sure.
Great call out. We've got one more question, but I want to make sure that that both Jess and Chris have their parting words of wisdom as well.
I kind of want something that pithy. I want something just crisp, Jess. Just what is something that you think the world needs to know here?
Oh my gosh.
I'm ready to go, Jess.
Oh my gosh. Oh. Okay. I think the world needs to know that for a launch, if there's a lot of noise out there, things launch every day. You have to boil it down to the single most important, most unique thing about whatever it is you're launching, and do no more than that. Boil it down to that. That's how you get people interested, and that's how you get the right people in too.
Right.
100%.
One thing you're saying. One thing.
I would echo that.
Most important thing.
I would echo that. And I was talking about be honest with yourself. Be honest about your story. Your story, you might not be the first to launch whatever you're launching. You might be the fifth in your space to launch this service or this capability. This partnership that you're thinking about launching might be absolutely boring. Too vendor to vendor, not enough meat on the bone to generate the type of press opportunities that you want. Ultimately, trust your partners, your PR agency. Be honest with yourself about what you think this launch is and what it can deliver from a media perspective, from an impact perspective. And I think that's hugely important. There's so much garbage and BS out there that journalists are having to navigate. They want to know that something's real. And, if it's not real, that's okay. You just have to figure out how to storytell around that and make sure that your story can resonate with the right audience. You're launching it for a reason. There's an audience for it. You just have to be very clear about what your story is and why it makes sense to issue that, whatever that announcement might be. So I think it's really important to just, what's the phrase? Kill your darlings. You just know you can, if your baby's ugly, it's ugly, but you have to figure out how to storytell around that. And so I think that's hugely important. Everybody thinks they've got the best product, the best launch. That's not the case. If you think that's the case, you are sorely mistaken, and you really have to have that outside view, kind of help you understand, what's worth it, or how to best position something in market.
Amazing. Well, on behalf of everyone watching, thank you to our three amazing panelists. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jess. We appreciate all of you. I wish I had some music to go during this LinkedIn Live, but I'm not.
You owe me a Charlie Brown remix, dude.
I do.
And thank you, Jeremy, for bringing this ragtag group together.
Well, what's important is the power of connection, the power of people, being able to dance, being able to mingle. With that said, thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. OhHello launches next week. It's a soft launch, making sure. Yep. We're going to, at some point, some of the feedback that I got. So in conclusion, the feedback that I got, make sure that content is crisp, and I'm focusing on one particular piece of of what is this doing for the user? What is the overall value? That content and PR are working hand in hand. There's a cohesion and a correlation between the two, and that the message is being perceived and tidied up. And then from an event standpoint, it's incredibly important to have trust from your audience. And any space is good space. So whether it's a small venue, a mid-sized venue, you can do it on the cheap. You can do it for a few $100, a few $1,000. I will be doing all of the above. So I appreciate it.
Dude, just put AI into the messaging somewhere, and you're going to be valued at like $1 million.
Just so everyone knows, we already have OhHello.ai for a reason. Yep.
This is huge.
Already have it. That's stage 2. That's next level once we secure some funding based on the metrics and the user experience. So with that said, thank you everybody. Really appreciate you all. Appreciate your friendships and your guidance on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Bye everyone. Thank you.